Since coming to power last year, the Labour government have certainly been quite busy in a lot of areas. A brief recap about what they've done, although I'm sure you've got your own list. They've had a good go at ruining this economy with an awful budget. They've tried their very best to eviscerate businesses, in my opinion, with punitive national insurance changes and silly inheritance tax changes. Southport riots last year, putting people in prison for very questionable things, including putting a mother, as you well know, in prison for 31 months for a Facebook post that she left in anger, came back after she'd walked the dog and deleted 31 months in prison. There's a few stories like that. They are doing their best to dismantle the private school system because ideologically they just don't like that. And in doing so, they've probably hurt the lives of a lot of young people and put a load of pressure on the public education system, which doesn't have places now for a lot of people. Let's not forget the farmers who've been put under a lot of pressure either. And, it could go on. I'm just going to stop after I mention the Chagos Islands and just, all of the ridiculous foreign policy stuff. David Lammy out there making a fool of the country. You've got Keir Starmer with his coalition of the willing and trying to be a war leader. I mean, there's been so much has happened. But I believe we haven't seen anything yet. And I think the big one that is going to really annoy people is the ever closer inching towards the European Union in terms of defence and trade.
Now it's time for my interview, and this week it's with writer and researcher David Banks, who's warning that the Labour government is to conclude a defence and security pact with the EU next year. And the commitments that could be agreed would mean that the UK would be unable to diverge from EU foreign and security policies, handing back key parts of our sovereignty. Well, to tell us more is David Banks. David, this is kind of going under the radar because we've got so many other issues to deal with. So talk to me about what is this about?
Yeah.
In layman's terms.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's being billed as a security pact and something that might be helpful for defence. But actually what they're dealing with is defence and foreign policy. Normally we talk about security in the UK in the context of counter-terrorism, tackling organised crime, but they're using the wrong word in this sense because it's really about defence. And it's actually happening next month.
Really?
Yeah, it's the EU agreement, the UK-EU agreement that Keir Starmer is planning to do with the EU Commission President. So what it is in a nutshell is that the government is taking what was intended, what the EU intended to put into the exit deal when Theresa May's government was in place, and reusing that so the UK would be subject to and committed to a whole load of legal agreements under treaty and linked to our trade agreement, our wider trade agreement. So in a way, the EU has enforceability over this agreement.
I was having a conversation with my dad a little while ago, and he's a little more battle-weary than I am. He's got 25 years on me, and so he has a different view of the world. And I do respect his opinion on many things because he's seen more than I have, and he's certainly seen more of governments. And he's certainly more weary of government, that's for sure. And I said to him, I believe that Labour is going to take us back into Europe in all but name only. And he said something strange to me. He said they wouldn't dare. They wouldn't dare do that because the people wouldn't stand for it. And I left that there, and I went away and had a think about that. And after a bit of thought, I believe that he was wrong about that. I believe Labour would dare to do it. I don't believe there's a lot of fight left in this population of ours. What would really happen if it did go ahead where we went back into Europe in all but name only? They're not going to come out and say, here's a bit of paper, and at the top it says, we're rejoining the EU in bold and underline. That's not how it's going to happen. It'll be done in incremental little strangers with different little security packs, like it's going to happen next month. like aligning standards. The economy's not going well, so we're going to make a deal with our largest trading partner over here. This is only sensible that we do this. And all of that, that's how it's going to be positioned. But from my point of view and how I believe it's going to happen, I'm almost sure at some point over the next 3 or 4 years that we're going to be back in the EU in all but name only. They're already doing it now. Next month, we are going to align in a defensive pact, a defensive association. We're losing sovereignty all the time, and it's pretty obvious to me that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party want us to be back in Europe. And I think as time goes on, as they become more disliked and more disliked, you know yourself what happens. When you realise that you're going to lose, what's the normal human reaction? Well, you go all in. It's as simple as that. When your back's into a corner and you know you've already lost, think about your own life. What do? Well, you just go all in. There's nothing else to do. And I think as we near the election in a few years' time, and I think as Reform or maybe the Tories gain ground onto Labour, I think they're just going to come up with a few even bolder moves. I think this is relatively straightforward to predict. And damn the people and damn what they think, because it'll be good for them. That'll be their rationale. Anyway, just some thoughts there about a recent conversation I had. I hope I'm wrong about that. Thanks very much for your time.